So, what happens when music's biggest night gets completely overshadowed by, well, a social media meltdown? We're going to unpack an analysis that dives right into that, a really fascinating story about fame, fragility, and the incredible power of a single joke.
And the whole analysis we're looking at kicks off with this one: simple sentence. It just perfectly sets the stage, right? A night that's supposed to be all about art gets totally hijacked by ego.
All right, so let's set the scene here. So the backdrop for this whole thing is, of course, the Grammy Awards. And the source material really paints this picture of a night that should have been about, these amazing performances, the big wins, basically a celebration of culture moving forward, led by the artists who are actually making it happen.
But then, smack in the middle of all that celebration, the analysis argues that the whole narrative just pivoted. It claims that one public figure, Donald Trump, who wasn't even there, somehow managed to completely hijack the conversation and pull all the attention right onto himself.
So you're probably wondering, how did that even happen? Well, the source calls it a social media meltdown, and it breaks down exactly what triggered it and the pretty explosive reaction that came next.
Okay, so the source lays out this pretty clear timeline. It says, all night long you had artists making political comments, cracking jokes, pretty standard stuff for an awards show. But it was one specific joke from the host, Trevor Noah, one that hit on some, let's say, well-documented associations that apparently triggered this huge online reaction from the former president.
So what did that reaction actually look like? Well, according to the source, the social media posts were just filled with this very specific mix of stuff. We're talking threats of lawsuits, a lot of name-calling, and claims of being the victim. The analysis points out this wasn't some kind of political comeback. It was something else entirely.
And this is where the commentary really gets to its main point. It stops just describing what happened and starts digging into the why. And it frames the whole thing as an argument about, well, fragility.
And here it is, the core argument. The source basically says this reaction had nothing to do with politics or policy. Nope, it was a gut reaction to what it calls social rejection. Just that raw feeling of being made fun of and, shut out by the cool kids of the cultural world.
And this really highlights the huge contrast the analysis is trying to draw. It's like two different people. On one hand, you've got this public persona of strength, right? Insulting rivals, always projecting power. But on the other hand, the source points to what it calls a private fragility, someone who supposedly spirals over a joke and desperately wants approval from the same celebrities he trashes in public.
So to back up this idea, the source points to a whole bunch of examples that says show this deep need for elite approval. We're talking about things like the gold toilets, this obsession with having celebrity friends, his whole reality TV career. The argument boils down to this. This isn't someone who hates the elite. It's someone who's just mad he's not invited to the party anymore.
And the commentary goes on to say that this wasn't just a one-time thing. Not at all. It suggests that this kind of outburst is actually part of a very predictable pattern, a kind of playbook that gets rolled out anytime he's the one being made fun of.
And here's the four-step pattern the source lays out. Step 1, he insults pretty much anyone. Step 2, someone turns that comedy back on him. Step 3, he immediately calls it defamation. And Step 4, the grand finale, he threatens to sue. The source presents this as this clear, almost automatic cycle.
The analysis also takes a really close look at the specific words he uses in his denials. And it argues that what sounds like a really strong, absolute no is actually, carefully worded PR language. It might be technically true, but it's designed to completely sidestep the actual accusation. So for example, the source points to denials like this one, and listen to how specific it is. I never went to the island. It's not, I had no association with these people. The commentary argues that's not, some clear moral statement. It's a technicality. It's a defense that sounds like it was cooked up by a team of lawyers.
All right, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle here. Why laughter, of all things, is presented as this really unique and powerful weapon against him.
So the source argues that the reason jokes about these really sensitive topics hit so hard is because, for years, the thinking was that if you just stay silent, the stories will eventually just go away. So when those same stories pop back up as a punchline on national television in front of millions of people, it apparently triggers total panic.
And this gets us to what is maybe the most important takeaway of the entire commentary. The source makes this really critical distinction. The anger isn't coming from being lied about, it's coming from being laughed at, for something that feels uncomfortably true.
So why is laughter so powerful in this context? Because as the source argues, it just operates on a totally different playing field. You can't fire a joke. You can't really sue a punchline into oblivion. And there's no way you can intimidate millions of people to just stop laughing. It's a force that you just can't control.
And that, according to the source, is the bottom line. That's why a comedy show, a night that's supposed to be about music, could rattle a former president more than any political debate. Because it used a weapon, ridicule, that all the power and all the lawsuit threats in the world just can't seem to touch.
So it really all comes down to this one question, doesn't it? How can a laugh, something so simple, sometimes be more powerful than a lawsuit? It's a pretty fascinating idea when you think about the real limits of power and just how fragile fame can be.